My name is Holly Bridges. I'm the author of Reframe Your Thinking Around Autism and the creator of A.R.T, Anxiety Reframe Technique. This is about an hour-long documentary looking at the work I did with a family in the US. Scott, in his late teens, was highly immobilized, executive functioning, working memory, speaking, engaging with his family, moving, being in the light were all very, very difficult for him. And slowly but surely, working through my technique, things became hugely different for him. He became far more embodied, far more able to access not just his physicality, but also his executive functioning, working memory, and his social capacity to be with the world. So this work's based on the Polyvagal Theory in many parts because we're looking at immobilization and the fact that the vagus nerve will go into a state of collapse and get stuck there. The other premise that I use for my work is that the body is highly intelligent, like an octopus. It's got a sentience of its own, and if we can find the right language and work with it well, a whole lot of things can flower and open and become more vibrant again. So this work is not particularly psychological, although it has to incorporate psychology. We're working with the body. We're asking it to warm up. We're asking it to move out of a very locked safety state and move into a state of openness, which is also a safety state, but one where you can actually engage with your world. This works unlike many other things in that sense because we're not using a cognitive lens. This is not behavioral supports. This is not how will I manage my world. This is how can I actually get greater functioning. And then we have to do that within the lens of a neurodiverse lens and ability to understand the human being so that we're not just becoming fast and snappy with our work. This is about integrating self, becoming more embodied, and finding a state of safety that is meaningful, that you can actually hold so that your life can transform. I hope you can see from the work that we've done that that's exactly what this work can do. Some of the footage is not ideal. I wasn't expecting to be on camera so much. My hair does not look good at all in some of the things. However, you'll see what this work can be, and you'll see the level of authenticity that we have and just how much they loved the process and how meaningful it was to the whole family. So have a look and see what you think.
So Scott discovered your book, and he read it and underlined lots of parts of it. And he also had seen you talk on AE. So he came to trust you and your understanding of his state. And he would take that book with him to school. He'd carry it with him. It was one of his just must have on me at all time things. It seemed that Scott had found that there was something in this that was going to help him.
We first started working with Holly about 1.5 years ago, and the change between that time and now in Scott is night and day. Just completely different. People that haven't seen Scott for a couple of years, like his grandparents came out to visit just recently, and my dad just was so taken back by how much change was in Scott, how much his smile came through, and how much eye contact he had, how just fully present he was. He said it was the highlight of his trip. And honestly, that's one of the highlights of my day every day is coming home and finding Scott actually available, present, and so much more comfortable.
He was not in their world. He had his arm out and he kind of smiled awkwardly and just not really participating emotionally, not comfortable in just in being with his brothers and having some fun socially. So Scott was really shut down with his communication, with his facial expressions, with his movement. Um, he spent a lot of time, as far as I could tell, like we didn't have a lot of verbal communication, just shut down and kind of like overwhelmed. Um, Scott spent a lot of time in the basement um, with the lights down low. And that's where we would go to talk to him. If you wanted to talk to Scott, you'd go down to the basement and just spend time with him there. It seems like we tried a bunch of things, and then for a while, we just sort of, at least I kind of started to give up. Like, I at least give up on the idea of there being any significant change for Scott. That it was going to be a lifelong thing, and that we would just have to find happiness in it, and somehow. But yeah, I felt like this was going to be something that we don't really overcome or that changes significantly. So we left it alone for a while, and it got harder. It seemed like it was harder than ever for Scott, and just frustration. At school, he got more and more shut down to where he was sitting outside the classroom. He wouldn't go into the classrooms.
Or I'd walk out sometimes when I had walked in.
Right. Yeah, so I would go to school to pick him up, and I'd find him in the hall. I'm like, "How long have you been here?" And he'd say, "All day long." That's just heartbreaking. I'm like, this is like a school that's designed for people with Asperger's. How are they not getting you into a class, and how are you so uncomfortable that you're in the? But it didn't do any good to get after Scott or to pepper him with questions. So it was kind of just, again, still painful. One day I was driving home from a church function where I had specifically been thinking about and praying in my heart for Scott, and I drove past this sign, and I'd never seen this sign before. I mean, I'd never really read it, and it's kind of this small sign on a road that I didn't usually take. And what did it say?
Co-create.
Co-create. It said co-create. It said COCR number 8. And I'm like, oh, it says co-create, and then it says infinite possibilities. And this is a kitchen design little place, with a funny label, but God used that sign to put into my head, there's hope, there's more. You go back to what you were doing and figure it out. There was a place where we could buy your a video where you did a AE presentation, and we watched that and were just amazed. And we already knew who you were, but this is like, what? And as we listened to you, what you said made sense, but the thing that really got us was the spoken testimonial of one of your clients, that just like that you had video before and after, and that is exactly what we've experienced. Like, I mean, as far as like the before and after, it was always so nice to talk to you first, Holly. Before you would start anything, you always connected with us. It's like, so I was always gathered. I needed to be gathered as well, emotionally. So that was really helpful because I felt inadequate with a lot of the things we were doing, especially at first. I felt like I had no idea. I kept thinking, I wish Holly lived closer. um, yeah, I was so fascinated with what was happening, so fascinated with the process. It took a little while for me to learn how to listen to, but gaining that skill is amazing. To be able to realize that there are, like so many other things that I've learned from you, that there are subtle things that are so important. Learning how to listen to the subtleties is critical to doing this work.
It was a difficult thing to get through. I'd often feel my senses and my strength fading. My vision would black out in the shower frequently. And it was a dangerous place. And swimming, I I can't exactly get out of a pool and go on living my life. So I have to be ready to go through that and commit time to showering also. It was a very um, it was a very present risk, very present threat that kept me from doing a lot of stuff. My social interactions were changing. It was, I thought I almost looked like I could have a natural conversation after just those 2 months. On that second day, after I came out of the basement, I don't remember what happened around this one event, but I looked down at my dog and gave the brightest, freest smile and wave I've ever given in my life, and I still haven't topped it.
Awesome. It's mind-boggling. It doesn't seem like logically, if somebody was to tell me, you're going to do these exercises and describe the exercises, and said, this will be your result, I would say hogwash. Such a thing would never. No, you don't understand it. Scott's in a very, very serious situation. It's not going to. There won't be change made by exercises where you're pushing on a ball.
If you think about 2.5 years ago as a dad,
Yeah. I just like,
you didn't see that.
I didn't see that ever happening. I saw him as just like, yeah, basically just like at a computer screen and with a bowl of cereal, or a bowl of ice cream, I guess at the time, huh? Yeah. Yeah, and the doors had just been shutting down because there was more openness when he was 10, and it was just like the doors just continued to seem to close. And even as he was working with you, he wasn't ready to do things like walk at his graduation. So he didn't go out the door. His brothers did a little ceremony for him inside with bubbles that they blew. And he just did that privately with us, and they had to just kind of deal with that. We'll have to send you a video. His brother has a video of him in the backseat going, would you do it now? No. He was all, bo, 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 bo. That wasn't it. Bo. I know it's from that video game that you're imitating.
Thomas asked me to.
Yeah.
And I saw the camera, but he didn't tell me.
Well, he didn't tell you he was videoing you. Got it.
He didn't say anything about a camera. I saw the camera and I kept going. I gave him permission to post it on social media.
I see.
And flexibility in a range of ways, like that's an example of that, a facility to kind of be really goofy requires a pretty good range of facility, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then being witnessed doing it is another thing again. Yeah.
His brothers can approach him about something they think is funny and just engage him with it, even with him not knowing what he's about to see, and being able to change gears to whatever they're showing him. And then he just can start, almost immediately, he'll start laughing. Scott had a massive milestone in that he went through the temple for the first time, which in our faith is, kind of like the bar mitzvah or more,
Yeah.
Like baptism. He made more covenants, and he was I was sitting next to him on one side, his brother was sitting on the other. During part of it, there's actually like a film where you see some different parts of nature and stuff. And I could just hear him just laugh, just a little light, just like I know his noises for I'm enjoying this. And I kept hearing this
little audible, just barely, but there they were, just kept popping, the whole thing. And here he is in this place that he's never, he didn't know exactly what it was going to be like because it's very private. You actually could go through it. And he was smiling and
Yeah. It is interesting looking back at the notes because I don't know if we were talking about this last time, but just the level of delicacy that we had, we had to proceed so cautiously and so delicately, and we were all holding space. We're holding space in a much more loose way now, aren't we? We're kind of batting things around, and that there's sort of shared ideas in the middle of us. But before, it was really having to hold it. Such a different experience. Yeah.
but it seemed like he also got to where he was listening to his body, and like that he started to understand that language better. And I can tell you that when I spoke with him after we would finish, he would remark that it was the way that you knew how to talk to him, that you made him feel safe, and so that kept building the building the trust, and creating the currency that it could spend on the next big challenge.
And look at you. You're so, it's different again 3 months later to see you. And it's not just that you've had your hair cut, but you're so poised and composed with this energy.
He's got this head out to the side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just so natural. I knew that you'd see the difference again. I was eager to see you see him because it's just good. Here he is.
He's beautifully embodied. Choreography of how your eyes and ears are interacting with different parts of your brain, and your face and everything, and in order to be able to do those different actions, whether it's actioning, hitting the volleyball with one hand and engaging with the room, with all the moving parts in the room and the energy of being in a group. Like it's so high order, but we forget that it's high order because it just works. When it doesn't work and then it does work, you can see the complexity of how lucky we are to be in this body and what it can do. And so and this is why you're going to be really interesting as well as you grow. Because you have this awareness at such a high order level that other people just don't get the thing of, I say that a bit, but you know what I mean, don't you? It's this huge space that you have an awareness of that other people haven't had the luxury of in an interesting way. And so, but the choreography of all of that is one thing. The choreography of waking up in the morning and having enough motion, internal motion and openness that your working memory and executive functioning stays online enough to hear, remember, whatever that you have to do, your treadmill and you want to, and your my exercises, whatever it is that you've got in play, is again another kind of choreography that you haven't had access to before. And it's there. And it's just neural pathways are open and happening and building. And they've been building, with the work that we've been doing for the last couple of years. And they've just been building. But they've actually got to a kind of a snowball place now, haven't they? Where they're like operating in a fairly fantastic way. And so what I imagine is you'll see another big jump. And like I think this is a huge jump. So the next, you'll just see that happening. And if I understand the frustration of, there's still so many things I want to do, but be really present to how clever your body is to have got you to here, because everything comes from this. You can't, and this is what people don't understand. Everything comes from this choreography, working properly and being awake. And your system has been so shut down and so complicit in staying shut down, because it was its best way of looking after you, that to retrain that is huge. It's huge. And so it's learning a language, but it's actually getting quite competent at that language now, by the sounds of things. Thrilling. Do you have anything to add to what I'm saying there?
I remembered that another thing I strive to commit to on a daily basis is to take a shower every day and to try to keep my body clean on the outside. It was something I decided to commit to because, like, that's one of the missionary self-care standard items. So that commitment to, like, figuring out how to work that in daily, consistently, and have it thoroughly improve my life.
Which is, again, a level of flexibility and robustness, isn't it? All of it's indicating that it's flexibility, it's robustness, and then it's not just the body operations, but it's the brain operations that are staying online to allow you to do that. And I know you know it, but it's quite interesting just the level of complexity you're able to accommodate now, let alone how you're talking is like so fluid. And that again is like all of this thing has to operate all together. In order to tell me all of that, you have to hold it in your memory and bring it out and articulate it, which is hugely complex interaction, and it's working. So you're so much more fluid in the way that you can share your existence and what you're thinking and feeling, more than last time I saw you even. It's so different. It's huge. My guess is it feels really exciting and it also feels really normal. Is that about right?
Yeah. Here.
Mm-hmm.
They both seem to, I don't know why, but I imagine them as being located in very thin areas. Like, you could just draw a line, certain sensations or certain tissues that could uh, be assumed to be the source of that sensation year over year. It seems to immediately have certain colors that they glowed in, but
So that imperceptible nearly that you noticed that's it. Because it's there. And then it's easily witnessed by other people who love you, you know. And then anyone else that saw you wouldn't really notice, because they wouldn't notice that that wasn't there a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was really hard. It was hard to move. Now movement is like, okay, this is what it's like. It's, what language did I use the other day with the piano? I think I said it yesterday. You've got this sort of music running through you that wants to come out your fingers and engage with the piano. Same thing. There's this sort of lightness of being. Oh, it's really, really nice. I think what we did yesterday was good. We did it because we can now, but it's pretty progressive. So my guess is next time I see you, this is my guess. Like what you said on the first morning, like a couple of days ago, is that there's still a lag for you with executive skills and getting things done. When you've got that music, it means there's all sorts of things waking up here. And there's a synchronicity of movement that you need to affect your executive jobs, you know, because otherwise there's a clunk to it, and then there's a tiredness because you have to think those 4 steps. But if you've got that kind of tinkling lightness going on, which is just a common reality for your body now, that opens up, in my opinion, a whole, well, let's wait and see, a whole nother level of what the channels of communication between your brain and your body, shall we say. So my guess is next time I see you in a few months, you know, whenever we're going to catch up again, that there will have been a jump there. I'll be interested to see. And so guess what I was thinking about before I got on this morning is you had a goal like at the end of this year for this year. I said yesterday, I think we're well on our way. Do you feel like that too? Like if we're going, where is your goal? Do you feel closer to your goal than you did at the beginning of the year?
I don't remember what the goal might have been, but probably yes.
Yeah. You, it was I probably got it written down properly somewhere, but I don't feel like looking for it. You stated a desire to make this a year where you really got things happening. So you were able to really do the things you wanted to do and be the person that you wanted to be. So do you feel like we're moving in the right direction for that? Yeah. Good. My guess is next time I see you, that question will be more concrete, because there's such a gap. No, gap's not the right word, but when your body works really well, you don't know how complex it is to go about your day and get all the things done. What it actually requires of your nervous system to do all this stuff. When there's a lag in your nervous system, you're very aware of how hard it is because everything takes such a long time. There's that level of inertia and exhaustion and hard to think, and well, that lack of clarity and clarity of movement. And so that tinkling waking up thing is a sign of spring. It is. It's that thing. And then you are seeing things externally that are easier. But I think that gap's getting smaller and smaller. So that your piano is an indicator of that process. And then more maybe left brain things that you have to do will come. I think it will look really different in a while. So we'll see. Okay, that's enough of that then. Do you want to get started, or do you want to say or ask anything? You're having more, perhaps not more, but I'm going to say more, self-awareness or about your social situation and your place in your social scene, or at least it is now being something that you can address.
Yeah.
Yeah. The latter or the former? Something you can address, you've always noticed it, or it's starting to matter now?
Both.
Are you still doing your church work?
Yeah.
Is it going well?
Yes.
Do you want to tell her maybe some things that are going well and some examples of what you're working on still?
We have officially got an addition to my schedule approved. That is something I want to have happen a lot of times during my mission.
He
Took a
wanted
while
to,
figure out how.
yeah.
So
he
how
had
to
like 4 regular assignments, but he had some gaps of time that he was like, I need more things. Like, let's put some more things on my schedule.
It takes communication and growing the relationship, at least from where it was. There were different reasons to not readily give me another assignment. Like, you can only find so many things in a small space where I'm regularly driving, and they weren't confident in my driving with my brand new license at the beginning.
October, it was new.
So, one conversation we've had recently, I learned they are more confident in my driving now, and they're comfortable with me going to
Different areas.
Now I feel like I could actually manage and to maybe change my schedule around from how it is. That seemed like a scary ordeal to get involved in at the beginning, in the first 3 months, but now I'm like, I could maybe be comfortable with the Wednesday thing being on a different day, this being on this day, and this.
You see more possibilities.
It's
That's the way I
interesting.
would view that, is like you see kind of more what the options and possibilities are. So
I feel more confident playing the piano. I've had another thing which occasionally happens where I try to go back to some old song, and it's much easier and more doable for me. And then I do another. And it's like, that one's more doable too. And I just realized there's been
Growth.
there's just been growth.
Yeah. At first, just being so shut down, where he wasn't communicating as much with us at that time, and just didn't, kind of small bandwidth for what he was able to do in every day. And then being able to have like a comfortable exposure to what your work is and who you are, and get a feel for you, and see what you had to say. And then just even the first exercise that was with pressure points on the hand, I remember his response was so interesting, because again, he would communicate with us every day, but kind of limited amount. He just was pretty internal at that time. And so his response about even how he felt after doing these different pressure points on the hand was incredible. Like, I could see there was a little bit of lighting up in his eyes, where he could see there were some possibilities that were coming. And he felt the difference, and like something about how it affected him. Do you remember kind of your response to those first pressure point things? Like,
I don't.
Yeah.
Like,
I wondered.
During the session, I don't remember.
Yeah. He was like, I felt something like it's different after we did that, So he just was recognizing that there was something happening because of the exercise and the work that you had done, even though it was a small amount at that point. And then as he gained that comfort and was able to try more things and learn more through the process, and as I've appreciated how you would explain what was happening, and kind of explaining the on the cognitive side, some of the things that are happening and why you make certain decisions in the therapy to do or not do exercise. Like, maybe we don't do it on both sides, we just do it on one side. And and you would explain the reasoning for us, and how the brain is creating new connections. Then those neurotransmitters are creating new pathways. And it was just really nice to have what we were doing and the understanding of it both coming together through your explanation, but then to watch the changes that it made for Scott. And I remember you telling me, as I sat in on some of the sessions and helped, to pay attention over, like, because we were going to meet again in a month or something, to pay attention over this whole month, because you'll continue to see changes. And we did. It was a lot of it was his facial expressions. There was so much more expressiveness instead of a very flaccid face. Or he would just talk with us more easily, and be able to converse more, and share things that maybe he wasn't comfortable telling us before. I can remember learning that he had experiences showering where he felt like he was going to black out in the shower. And I was like, how come you never told us this? But he just was too shut down. I told friends, I'm like, if you watch the therapy sessions that Scott had, you would think, okay, what's how is this helping? Like, seems like small things, and yet it has a tremendous impact when it's done right. Went back in to see his psychiatrist. He just had this huge smile, and he just was like, wow. Just even the first interactions with Scott, as he greeted him and we came into the office, and he just said, wow, I can hardly believe this is the same guy, And he just talked about how different that you seemed and looked, and how good you seem. And you were able to express a lot of things in that conversation, which your dialogue was more limited in past visits, because communications were more challenging, just harder to know what you wanted to express and how, and to do it. But he really did. He felt like you just seemed like a different person altogether. So we did talk about the work that he had done with you to the doctor. And I remember Scott trying to decide where to start as in explaining to the doctor what this therapy had done for him. And he said, well, she basically helped me to feel safe. That was his opening comment. And I thought, oh, that's actually brilliant. You know, knowing what we know now, I mean, because of all that we've learned in this process of just learning about what autists are dealing with and what this means physiologically, what they kind of go through. And so for him to say that, well, she basically helped me feel safe. I thought that is so key, because there's things you just don't do or can't do if you don't feel safe.
Interesting finding that safety, because you can't just tell your brain to do it.
You have to actually feel safe.
Yeah,
it's
true.
like, I'm gonna make myself feel safe. You can't do that. Yeah. So there's definitely something to that. And what's the growth that needs to happen? What changes have to happen to be able to feel safe? Yeah.
And it's multi-layered, because there's so much going on in the physiology as well as the psychology. There's so much happening.
Just opened him up and changed how he felt, and he was more aware of what was going on physically for himself and what his needs were and how he could meet those needs, and all of that, you know, it was just happening in layers as he would meet with you over time. And then just practicing some of those exercises on his own and finding so much more resilience. I have so many friends who, you know, maybe they haven't seen Scott for a while, or when knew him when he was younger and was not as communicative, was just kind of more shut down, or you know, they could see that certain things were challenging to him, you know, in like maybe even just in participating in church or church activities, and, you know, uncomfortable clothes, just things that were a struggle for him, that they may have noted watching him as he was growing up. And then when they see him now,
Wearing shoes at church.
yeah, sometimes he would be in church with no shoes when he was young. How you were so gentle with him and so good at holding space when he needed to just have some space, or what, so super attentive to little things like that might be needed during the sessions too.
Yeah. And like when you would invite me to try and make a sound when I was in that when I was in a more vulnerable physical state, I guess. I think you probably know that it's probably a textbook expectation almost for you, some things that will help, but you still held space for me for so many months.
Mm-hmm.
You gave me opportunities, and I got comfortable with what I could.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to do what I was ready for. And eventually you asked, did he make a sound?
That's right.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Because I did.
Yeah.
Just a little sound. And I can make sound now.
You sure can.
To be so existentially stuck in an inertia state that making a sound from that point is so incredibly difficult, and it's altering your physiology to do it. It's making a choice at this really deep interstitial level to reimagine that very, very fixed space. That's the jump. And then you're asking your synapses, in the middle of them is where it all happens, this sort of dark matter, and you're asking them to think it new. And then you're having to come in where your body's used to shutting you down, and you have to come in at that really deep space and choose, and you did.
Yeah.
I've never explained that to someone. I haven't thought about in a while how, like, I haven't made sense of it in a while. How my body, like, my legs had a really hard time just doing the pushing exercise. Like they always had this rigid resistance and this and responses that made it harder to do the exercise. I I still don't I still haven't figured out for myself why that was, or if everyone would.
May I try and explain it to you? I'm going to use polyvagal language a la Holly. Go with a bit of science in there where I feel like it. I think the ball exercise is teaching people to tiptoe away from the lion. So that Peter Levine video years ago, I'm pretty sure I got you to watch, and you watch the different states. And so you have the immobilized gazelle, I think, that then gets up and runs away. You have the mobilized polar bear that gets up and shuffles away. The point where the body takes over and shuts you down means you lose choice and you lose traction. And that's the point that we've been working at with the, a long amount of time in that space where the body is like clamped on your ability to tiptoe away because it thinks you're not safe. And no amount of telling it that it's safe is going to make any difference. So that's where we're working. And then, before we were speaking about the interstitial level of that, of noticing that point and meeting it and making choices, very subtle choices. But then you have to ask the body to mobilize. And it's like, sure, you can make that choice. And that's why I talk about synapses, because it starts there, but then it has to move into gross motor and muscles and movement, which are all big things. And the body, all these channels of communication are on switch off. And that's what it knows. And it actually, again, my language has to jump train tracks to go to a different line in order to have that efficiency and fluidity of movement. And it doesn't want to make that jump because it's like, I don't know that's there. Someone the other day said it's like Minecraft where you're rendering and you're making more land. It's like the body and the brain do not think there's anything else there. So you're on the edge of a cliff the whole time is what it feels like. That's why you're brave to do the work, because it doesn't look speedy on the outside, but you're having to trust that there's more. I think I've said, I've seen like Raiders of the Lost Ark when he's going for the prize in this big cave and he has to step out and trust there's something there. Like it's a lot. And so when you got to the point where you could push more, and I can't remember where that was particularly, and you would probably know better, your body's going, I don't think I can do this. And so we try and then we leave it alone. And then it goes, maybe. So each time it thinks about it a little bit more and it shuffles towards that other train track. And so for a while, you're kind of in between the two of them. Yeah. And it's you're off the rails, not wildly, but just clunky. And then And then you hit your slipstream, you know, you jump to that bit, and then, which is what we've
Yeah.
seen. And then look at you now, you're just like off and running. But I think that's what it is just the body's resisting moving into that space, but it's about safety. And it doesn't safe to do that, and it doesn't understand it until it goes, oh, actually, this is pretty normal.
I like that he knows he has greater capacity to do things, and that he knows he's ready to try new things. And yeah, I like seeing that change for him.
When you told me you guys were talking about Pinocchio today, and Scott mentioned that that's something that I connect with. You know, for me, it's because the childhood memories of watching the moment that the what is she? Is she like a godmother or something? The fairy comes in, the blue fairy comes and she magically waves her wand because Pinocchio's earned the right to be a real boy. And these wooden, you know, this wooden puppet that's a miracle in itself, but um, you know, he transforms and there's this light and it's just a beautiful, amazing moment that I connected with when I was 4 or 3. But as we were talking about that, I realized that I feel like that's you, that you're that same person for Scott, that Scott was, for all practical purposes, just a wooden puppet.
The Pinocchio thing today was really nice because we keep finding metaphors for understanding where we are. So I like when you started talking, I realized more. It is a really interesting metaphor for being immobilized. Like, because I was at the other end when I was saying you don't have your strings anymore, and being the context was actually sovereignty, and it's hard to have sovereignty when you're frozen because you haven't got agency in the same way. But as you're talking, I realized just how apt it was to
Yeah.
as a frozen metaphor as much as anything, and then just how much he's actually um through the process, which is allowed by all of us, you know. And like it's nice to be the blue fairy.
Yeah, that's you. You can be a real boy now. And I think of other metaphors, just the moment, like that would maybe also be appropriate, and they're just flashing through my mind too quickly. But one of them is that, like, I mean, the real boy, you know, it's like he enters into this body. It's like it's not really. I'm sorry, I'm tripping over my words, but I imagine like a puppet, you know, that's been not able to fully move, you know, like
Yeah.
maybe just had part of the hand in it, you know, and he's kind of this one-fingered puppet kind of trying to move his body around and work. But as he's done this work, he's been able to just very naturally find the finger holes and
Yeah.
actually get himself up into the puppet. And then you see this live, you see in his eyes and his neck and his arms and his speech and his laugh. He's laughing right here. You know, he's just like, he's fully in his body now,
Yes.
and he's experiencing something that it's like he's able to bring all of himself into his body as opposed to just like a little periscope.
Yeah. 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 For
From
me,
deep
I
within,
feel,
like,
yeah, I feel like what the work is helping people bring their soul back into their body. It sits out here and it flies around, and you have access to all sorts of wonderful things, but you don't have access to your body. And so they come together, and that's what we've seen with this week, Scott, is just how much that is now true. And the blue fairy for me, while it's fun to be the blue fairy, I actually feel more like where what I do is make a space for her to come.
right.
And
That's
for me
beautiful.
being the fairy, I'm just good at submitting
Right.
to make the space. Then we
Right.
get that feeling, because it's a feeling, it's a magic like, because we weep half the time, in those early sessions, we're just crying all the time. But the beauty, you can feel it. It's electric, and it's, when you went off whoosh with that blue fairy thing, that's what it feels like. But I feel that electricity when we get shifts, and I know when we don't have it, and so I'm good at playing with it, but I'm not the fairy as well, which I think's nice.
And it seems like everybody has everyone in the state has a fairy, and it's just, creating that
Yes.
space. Do you remember the time that Scott said, you asked him how he felt, and do you remember, Scott, you described this little bubbles. You
Yeah.
said, what was that? Do you remember?
Do 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 do.
I remember you talking about bubbles popping up.
Soda bubbles would perfectly look in shape and movement like what it felt like.
Yeah.
And it was just coming out to every surface.
Yeah.
Like towards the surface of my body.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
That
got
was
a
really
body.
cool.
You got a real body.
You're a real boy.
You're a real boy now. You connected up.
And then if you start looking at microtubules, I don't know if you know anything about microtubules, Scott, but there's quantum physics and microtubules, and people are talking about consciousness now in terms of all we are is a series of microtubules.
I know what you're talking about. I know that guy, and he got together with Penrose, the anesthesiologist in the United States that has the theory of the quantum theory and the microtubules creating consciousness when it collapses.
Yeah.
And I love that theory.
Yes.
So
there's where there's blockages in the river, or blockages in the microtubules from a shut down constricted space, and all we're doing is making some space so they open again, and the fairy can come in, or the soul can come in, or their consciousness can come and infuse us, because while we're here in this corporeal body, it's actually supposed to be electric and able to move. And then it's the best fun. And then we're starting to find language for that more and more, which just excites me no end, because I just go, that's what I'm doing. That is actually the point of this work. Who am I within this now that I have this integration of consciousness? So you bring all that you were, and it is sitting in here, and then you're learning to regulate your body some more so that you can master the ship or master the flow so that it doesn't go back to contraction. So you have access to yourself, because while you're in a body, you should have access. That's the whole point of it. So it's lovely. Is what you're saying, as well as it being freeing and validating and healing, there's an aspect of it that allowed you to be you. So we weren't squishing you in a box.
Yeah. Man, the day I was like in the car with my dad, and he was like, "Oh, I gotta go get something else from inside," and I'm like, what was in my head is I should say something like, "Okay, right." What was waiting to come out of my mouth was okie dokie. And I'm like, who let this in? I was not silly for so long. I mean, maybe I was silly, but maybe, yeah, it wasn't so much, it wasn't so fun or comfortable. Yeah.
So now you are comfortable?
Yeah. I mean, still figuring that out. Like, for some reason, my face sometimes naturally, well, I have no idea how this happens, why it happens, how to stop it from ever happening again. I don't know. But I can look really anxious or really like, actually, I don't know if I can, but I can.
May
But my
I?
just wants to contort into some really agitated or angry expression, or that's what I feel like suddenly I'm fighting really hard as I'm trying to just continue from some random point in a conversation with whoever. I can just be struck with this bad feeling in my face that I feel I have to fight.
Yeah.
A lot of the time people say they can't tell.
Yeah, but there's a perceptible constriction for you. From my
Maybe.
personal experience, I think so far, what I think, because that may change, is that your body and mine too has a really early learnt response to doing that, so that it does it quite easily. And the while there's this huge change, so that you've got your microtubules open and there's fluidity of movement and features and vagal, ventral vagal and all the stuff, it can get tripwide quickly, more quickly than other people, because it knows that space better than other people. And so my face does that a lot. It does. I've got more comfortable with not minding, which I think's a lot of it. You can have an awareness of it and then not mind, and then it comes back online quicker because there's a grace and a kindness and the things that we were talking about today of and the other day as well, it's like, how can I, what do you need to the body? How can we support you? And so when things like that happen, you're kind and non-judgmental to the best of your ability. And I think that then stops the anxiety that you just go into your head and go, oh, I look terrible, I'm not saying, and then you can go into this whole configuration while you're trying to have a conversation with somebody. So the more that you can be generous with that as a reality, it actually doesn't happen half as often. And then also you can employ what we've learned. You can just, while you're talking to someone, just hold a point while you're talking to them and soften the body back and support it, because it doesn't look like much just to do that, and it isn't much, but it is a lot. Well, now that we know what we're doing, and I thought it was interesting with Rich going, the glove, like becoming embodied and that. And then the other day you just use one pinky and you softened your whole body, you know? And if you just got someone off the street and went, just touch these 4 things, like it wouldn't do anything, it would just be weird. But we're applying it with a whole lot of sophistication and understanding and integration of a billion things that mean that you then have a very interesting tool that you can apply in those kind of circumstances. But the grace, I think, matters, and the acceptance. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything else you want to say? Or are you done?
For a while, talking to people was like impossible. Trusting people was like unfathomable.
In conversation and relation to other people, what I took from what you just said was, do you actually trust yourself more now?
Yeah. Yeah. That's been that shows in a lot of ways. That it's different, I think. Yeah.
When your consciousness is flying around out here somewhere and your body's frozen or a block of wood, how do you trust it? You can't pull your levers and make your face move properly. You can't grab your thoughts and use them and share them and take all that information of that other face and whatever else is going on. It's too hard. And so you can't trust your body to respond to the world, the interface. So now you can. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I like fun.
Yeah.
I like fun now.
It's really nice to have this conversation. It's really important, it feels to me. I don't actually have words for it. It's just really important. It's important to hear yours and the truth of it for you, because that's what it's for. And that you can be and seem to be and say you are more resonant with yourself is really nice. What are you thinking?
I like the way you say that. With all the words you did. I don't I don't know a lot of people that say things like this. With this, I don't know, pattern of thought, maybe. Pattern.
Yeah. It's a bit to me like a big microtubule, in that while it can be a pattern, it's also, it's like what we were saying before with the body, where we're making space for something that is. However, it's not readily seen by the typical world, the real world, or whatever world, and all are right and true. But this dimension of understanding and this dimension of being has its place. And I can't even language this properly now, and I'm half lost, but I know what you mean. And you can feel it, and it's palpable. And I think this work only works because that's part of, it's all of it. If you haven't got that, you're just going, Let's get snappy. Let's get you back into that box. And I don't think humanity is supposed to be in a box. Ever. So you've got big things now, haven't you? Of being in a body, being a human being of great stature in that way, in terms of consciousness.
Yeah. I feel like, I don't know, I might be as easily impressed as a goldfish about like what life is. Um, and to compare it, to try and compare it to what it was like some years before, back when I was in high school, like back when I was 14 maybe, at the beginning of high school, I was always like, I was so, I could be terribly, like, I could be disappointed or embarrassed about things I did just months ago as like like feeling like I must be like I've since tried to completely like try to make myself new, not like I would compare myself and I think I really don't want to be doing that again. Now I'm, for some years, I've been feeling at times feelings, and I'm like, wow, is that what the emotional state felt like back some years ago during this time in my life or in that time in my life? And part of the reason I continue to question if those feelings I have are is because they're just so, they're kind of frightening to experience. It feels, I don't know, not just really, it feels less human or less alive sometimes. I get feelings like, and I, I'm, some experiences are still beyond me. Like, I don't know. It's, well,
It's
my
all,
world is a lot bigger too.
yeah.
Anyway, you can speak.
Oh, no. I just, I, if I'm hearing you properly, and I'm sorry if I interrupted inappropriately, you're recollecting and connecting with the feelings of how it was, and the isolation and the fear, and if you can't trust your body, it's very hard to feel safe. It's just very hard to feel safe. And so, especially in school and that kind of environment, it's a lot of work. And so, and when you're immobilized and you're emotionally shut down because you're coping with all of the stuff, like masking doesn't even cut it for me as a word half the time. It doesn't mean anything to me because it's so bigger than that. That it's only now, maybe from a vantage point and a point of safety, that you can look back and feel that, because at the time it was impossible. So you're integrating it now in a way by being able to go back and feel it, acknowledge it, and it's very difficult to do. Again, I want to affirm that's how hard you've worked, because that's where we were working, that's where we were playing, and you didn't know what I was asking you to do, and you were navigating all of that at the same time, and it's a huge journey of courage. It's huge. And I love that you're able to look back now and assimilate that, so that it's not split, it's assimilated and held within you. And then it just informs you, will inform the rest of your life, to understand that truth, because other people have that truth for a variety of reasons. And also the way that you're able to be kind and generous to yourself and to those parts of yourself then means that you get bigger.
Yeah.
And you can have joy. I have no words for all of this that we're sharing. And so being able to debrief this, and maybe it's like, maybe it's like when you go and climb Mount Everest with someone and you're never the same again. Like, it's got that to it, I think. And maybe that's why, like, if you had to discuss what it was like to be on Mount Everest and getting all the way back down, you wouldn't necessarily even think to word it, because you would have, it's been an experience. But it feels like that to me, and I don't feel the same, and I know you're not the same. And also, one of my really fun metaphors for, I don't know, I wrote it somewhere. I think in my training, I say something about being a good guide, like Tenzing Sherpa, I think that's his name, who took Hillary up Everest. And I say you have to be a good mountain guide, like that's the work. So that's actually really fun for my role in this. And it's not nothing, but I'm not climbing for you, and you have to do the work and find those peaks and move past the fear and move past the immobilization and find a new hero. I'd say the hero emerges. You've emerged now. It's lovely. So I'm really grateful. Thank you. And I'm grateful for this chat. It's very important to me.
Yeah.
Thank you for watching this in its entirety. I hope you can see from this video just how hard Scott worked and how much tenacity he had to have, and just how hard it is for people to be in a body that is that overcome with inertia, that getting through your day requires an enormous amount of willpower, and the psychology involved in getting yourself through that day. I hope you can also see from the work, even in the small way that we've shown it here, the subtlety of the work. We're doing both a blend of psychology and a blend of somatics so that the person is very front and center. This is not just about moving the body, and this is not just about moving the mind. It's a beautiful blend of both that includes the soul and the universe and everything else at the same time. It matters. If you would like to know more about this work so that you can learn it and integrate it with things that you're doing and or become a fully qualified ART practitioner, please see my website, www.zebr.co. Thank you.